Is that, oh, gotcha. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks for coming. We're here in case you are not here for this. We're in a seminar about the Raising Hope Fund. That's an endowment program that Hope Presbyterian Church has. It was started about 15 years ago. A member here passed away and left $500,000 to the church. And so what we decided to do with that was spend a third of it on things that the church needed at the time. There was a lot of deferred maintenance and other things. And also and that was split between capital and mission and evangelism, and then put the rest into an endowment. And so the way that the endowment fund works is that gifts are given to that. 75% of what comes in goes into the endowment, permanent endowment. 25% goes into the spending funds, and then that endowment grows. And there's a baseline that includes factoring for fees and inflation. So we keep a baseline amount, so if the market is low and we don't have enough to give to the funds, we don't take any out until we come back to the baseline. So that way, there's no erosion of the amount of money, and it grows slowly as people give to it. So that's it in a nutshell. There's a detailed policy, and you all can have a copy of it if you want, but it's a lot of technical reading. So the way the fund is set up is the Raising Hope Fund is the program that is the endowment. There are two spending funds, what we call action funds. One is the capital fund, and one is the mission and evangelism fund. And therefore, they're exactly how they sound, right? The session did agree to a change somewhat later where we can shift money between the funds. So if some large mission thing came up, we could steal from the capital fund, or if we had a large building need, we could take from the mission fund to pay for it. So there is some transferability, but generally they're kept separate. When new money comes in, as I said, 75% of it goes to the endowment, and 25% goes to the action funds, and they're split 40-60. So 40% goes to capital, and 60% goes to mission and evangelism. And as long as we have money in those funds, they're available. You can access those funds. It's easier to go through a committee, but individuals can as well. If you have a mission project you want to do, or if you're buildings and grounds and you want to do something with the building, we can apply to the session for those funds. The session controls all of the expenditures for that. That flow sheet that I gave you, the flow chart that I gave you, shows how it works. And thank you, Grace Nolan, for preparing that. She did a great job with that. Currently, we have the endowment is split into two funds. Again, there's just a lot of splits and percentages, but the endowment is split into two funds. There's a bond fund, which is stable, low interest, but gives sort of a baseline of security. And then there's equities and securities as the other fund, and that's about two-thirds. It's about one-third, two-thirds split. So currently we have $122,786 in the bond fund and $400,512 in the equities fund. And those are rebalanced every year. We meet with financial advisors and look at what the markets are doing, see if we need to move things, and then rebalance the funds in between the two, bond and equities. And so we try and maintain that one-third, two-thirds, and to have investments that will give us enough money that we can have something to spend, but also that's not too risky, because we don't want to risk the money, too much. So currently available for use, the capital fund is $35.25, so not huge, but we did get a little bit. So the last 2 years there wasn't any. Oh, Tom, 3 years? Last 3 years, there wasn't any contribution? I think it's 2 years. Because the baseline of the fund, I talked about that earlier, we keep a baseline. The baseline of the fund was not up to where it needed to be the baseline. So there were no distributions from the endowment into the spending funds. Does that make sense? But this year we did. The Mission Evangelism Fund is $13,929. So the total of all funds is $542,686. There are ways to, so the ways to access it is you can request for benevolence. That's generally through the pastor. The session just last meeting appropriated $5,000 to the benevolence. So people come in, they need a bus card, they need a little help with their rent, they need help paying a bill. They can, the pastor and Ginny talk with them, work through it, assess the need, and give out money as mostly, like if people need a place to stay, we'll buy the hotel room, but we'll pay it to the hotel and stuff. So, or give gas cards or things like that. So, we're trying not to fund people's lifestyle, but also to help them out in a way that really goes to help. And I think Ginny and Pastor are pretty good about that. Committees or deacons can fill out an application and present it to the session. Again, most people apply to mission funds, and there's an application form. You can get it from the office. It's really pretty straightforward. If you are an individual and you're looking to do a project, probably the easiest way to do that is to go to a committee. So if you have you ran into somebody who's doing something really great and you want to help, they want the church to help support them, go to the mission committee and say, hey, I got a great idea. These people are doing laundry for free and we need to help them, So then you can apply through the mission committee for your funds. That's simplest. Individuals, I think there's something in there about 3 people have to be together on it. So it's not just one person. But if you go through a committee, it's automatic. If you're an individual and you need assistance, you can ask the deacons or the pastor for benevolence. I guess the advice is when you fill out the form, be clear on what your goal is and what you think the outcome's going to be, because that will help session determine this is worth funding. I'm not aware of any that were denied as long as we had the money, but I guess there's a first time for everything. So if you want to contribute, you can do a bequest, you can do a donation. You just have to identify it as to the Raising Hope Fund, and if you do that, just be aware that unless you say it goes to the action funds, that 75% will go to the main endowment and 25% will go to the spending funds. So unless you say something, that's the way it will work. And that happens with all kinds of things that come in, memorials and other things that are unspecified. Yes?
Does that make clear who people do donate their control at a time?
Yeah, so, you can donate to the Deacons Fund or the General Fund or Raising Hope. If you choose to donate to Raising Hope, then yes. That's one reason why we did the flow chart there, so it can show you what's there. Yeah. We want to be clear about that. That's one reason why I'm doing this class, because people who are newer or who just haven't thought about it for a long time, we want to make sure that everybody understands how it works and want to be really transparent about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's like 5 avenues, the General Fund, the Deacons Fund, the Raising Hope Endowment, or one of the 2 action funds. Yeah. We try and encourage people to do undesignated gifts, because sometimes you get things like, we currently have a gift that's being held for a columbarium. It's not enough to do the columbarium, and it's been reserved for that. So, at some point, if we don't get other people who are interested in that, we'll have to go back to the donor and say, hey, we're not getting other people interested in this. And honestly, the session isn't really super interested in it, to be frank. And so we'll probably have to go back to the donor and say, hey, can we use this for regular things? Do you want it back? How do you want to do this? So we try and, unrestricted gifts are the best. They're easiest, and you just have to trust that the session's going to spend it wisely. But like I said, you can do anything, really. So any special gifts that are non-pledge, bequests, annual gifts, stock or property, etc., go into the endowment spending funds unless you say otherwise. So that's it in a short nutshell. Does anybody have any questions?
How do you establish the baseline? Is that an annual thing that you take a look at? How does that work?
Yeah. And Tom, you jump in here if you want. So, the baseline is what we started with in January 1st of a year, and what the inflation and things have been, and fees that were taken out of the fund, what that number would be at the end of the year. So December 31st, we should be at this number based on inflation and everything else. So we try not to erode the fund, right? You don't want it to erode from inflation, so we want to keep it at a baseline. It only really increases in real value if people contribute to it. So the baseline is what it is after you factor in inflation and fees.
Let's sing Holy, Holy, Holy. That would be great. Let us sing Holy, Holy, Holy. It's the first hymn in the hymnal, if you need that, need the words. Somebody else needs to pitch this for me.
Yeah. So what happened was there was a pretty big dip, and we went way below the baseline, and it took 2 years to come back up to baseline. So we did increase, the value did increase during that time, but because we had dropped below the baseline, and we hadn't hit that number yet, there weren't any distributions to the election funds. Yeah. I mean, the idea is that we always have this amount of money that's generating money for us year after year. So I'm not necessarily a fan of sitting on a lot of money, but on the other hand, every year, well, most years, we get some kind of income from it that then we can spend, and then it goes on forever, So that was sort of the idea behind it. The money is tied up pretty tightly in the endowment. I think it requires 75% vote of the congregation or something to break the endowment. But it can be done, but it's got to be a pretty big emergency and have a lot of people really want that to happen for it to happen. So, I mean, session can't do it by itself. It has to be a vote of the congregation. So, any other questions?
So if you got money, you're above the baseline, you have extra money, then you send it back to the action fund or something. Generally, that's where it goes.
Yes. And 40% of it goes to the capital fund and 60% goes to the mission fund. Yeah.
And capital fund right now, you're at 35,000.
3,500. Yeah. Did I type it wrong? Oh, okay. Shoot. Not sure about. Yeah. We generally in this church find it easier to spend money on the building than we do on mission projects, and the mission team is pretty good about using their so we give the budget has mission money in it, and they use that, and they do the fundraisers like the Hope for the Holidays, that generates income that they give away. So a lot of the money given away is either raised or in their budget, but they do have special projects that come in, and we look at it and generally say yes. The mission team is really good about finding worthwhile things. Any other questions? I have one for you. Every 3 years, we're supposed to review the policy and update it. It hasn't been updated since 2014. So I want a team to look at this. I've already talked to you, Becky, about it. But if anybody's interested in getting into the depths of the policy, how it all works, Tom, okay? I'm going to put together a little team probably sometime after Easter, so May, June, to kind of go through it and make recommendations to the session. Again, nothing happens without session approval, but we'll look at it and tweak it if it needs to be and make a recommendation to session. What was that?
Well, maybe LaCleda had some requests, and we really do need to take a closer look.
Yeah. I do have a copy of it here, and we can make more. If anybody wants a take-home copy, I can make some in the office, or if anybody wants this one.
Also, in the annual report, there's a concise report on raising hope and how we established the baseline.
The session gets a report on it every month, and Tom does all that, and so thank you, Tom. And so we, want to be good stewards of the money and also have available for people, who need it.